And welcome to Discovering the Truth here on Ahlebait TV. I'm here with another topic and a new guest, and we're going to be discussing another important topic tonight with regards to Islamic feminism as well as Muslim feminists. And with me tonight, joining me in the conversation, we have Sister Professor Angelica Maria. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sister. Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's my pleasure. And whereabouts are you at the moment? I know you're across the globe from me tonight.
Yes, I'm in Bogota now.
Wow,
Bogota,
that's
Colombia.
amazing. Colombia, brilliant, brilliant. So tonight we're going to be discussing Islamic feminism as well as Muslim feminists. What is your thoughts on that so far? Because it's quite a controversial taboo topic.
Yes, well, in the name of Allah, the merciful, the magnificent, I think when we talk about feminism, we should be careful not to fall into generalizing terms that do not go in accordance with Islamic teachings. So, actually, in Islam, we do have a lot of rules and a lot of regulations that give women a very high position. So we should be really careful when talking or adapting our lives as Muslims to Western policies. So, of course, we do have rights in the West. As a Latina Muslima, I know that I know how to explain this, and I know that in our communities, in our countries, we have a lot of rights. But we need to know exactly what rules we need to follow in Islamic behaviors, and of course, adapt, but in a good way, in a proper way, to the Western societies.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great introduction, actually, because it is quite a diverse definition and it has evolved over time what it means to be a feminist. And there are extreme sort of definitions to that as well. So we need to be clear as to what it actually entails. I feel that a lot of people in our faith, it is actually said that it does not coincide with our teachings of Islam. But I guess, I'm here to play a little bit of devil's advocate as well, and some of what some, Muslim females who are advocates towards feminism might be actually screaming out today if they're listening to this. So I want to be fair and I want to be just and I want to basically question this. And obviously, this is a live call-in show. If you have any questions, please do call in with your comments and any questions. When it comes to women fighting for their rights, unfortunately, as much as we have rights as women in Islam, it is not necessarily adhered to, it's not really practiced, whether it's in amongst the communities or certain countries across the globe. So we do find Muslim women, especially in today's day and age, that are standing up for their rights. They are standing up for what is actually belonging to them when it comes to that. So I would say that they might define feminism as actually trying to maybe voice what is their right, but you still say that there is a danger in even using that terminology. So would you say that we need to sometimes maybe give more education in our community about women having their rights so they don't feel the need to use these kind of ways of moving forward, which might actually be detrimental to them even later on? What is your thoughts on that, Angelica?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, in the years that I have been a Muslim, it's like 18 years, I've noticed that there is lack of understanding, lack of knowledge about women's rights. And I'm happy when I see women standing up for their rights, and that's wonderful. That's fantastic. But the issue here is that in some communities, I'm talking about Latino communities or any Western community, we see that women, since they don't know their rights, they don't know how to fight for their rights. Of course, men usually don't really give a thought about it. They are comfortable in general terms with what is going on. So women prefer to be quiet, not to speak up, not to say or to reveal what is going on in their homes. So
Mm.
it just happens like that. So of course there is lack of study, there is lack of understanding, and there should be something done about it. In the Islamic centers, for example, in the masjids, there should be classes specialized for women, for teaching them how to defend themselves, how to know their rights, and how to stand up for their rights. Of course, there is a lot to be done about it.
No, definitely. I think it's very true what you're saying. And I also would like to add to that that it's not just giving education to women, but mainly actually giving education to men as well about women's rights so that they actually are the ones that are not being seen as the oppressor or anyone that is taken away or not actually living in that particular way. So it's an education from a young age. I think we find that a lot in our Muslim community. What do you feel that as a new Muslim, whether or not you've been practicing for years, coming into Islam and trying to find your way as a Muslim woman, coming from a Western society, at the end of the day, do you feel that there is more work to be done, even though Islam has very clear guidelines with regards to women's rights? Do you think that coming from a
Mhm.
Western society that you have explored being a Muslim woman, in what particular way in your experience or the women around you, what is your sort of experience on Muslim women rights and feminism when it comes to converting from a different faith or no faith into Islam?
Mhm. If we take it from a social perspective, of course, humans, when they adapt, when they try to go into the process of acculturation, of course, there are changes that need to be done. And of course, human beings refer to what they know, to what they have in their structure, in their mental, social, cultural structure, and they try to adapt those things. Of course, if there is something missing in the process, of course, there would be like a mixture of things. So that is an issue that we need to be careful about, because most of the people belonging to our Muslim more converts. So we don't know much at the beginning. We need to struggle a lot because sometimes
Mhm.
there is no material in Spanish or there is not enough material in Spanish. So that is why it is necessary to be guided into the process. So that point that you made remarkable there is really important because when a new convert comes to Islam, he or she needs to be taught correctly what the rules are, what the faith is about, and all the elements. So that is why education is essential. And I totally agree with you when you say both women and men should be educated. Children should be educated as well. There are some steps that have been taken in the last few months, but there is a long way to go. So of course, when you don't know something about Islam, you are going to adapt your own culture and your own nature into Islam. So that is why there are some inconveniences, there are some problems at the moment of interacting with other Muslims, at the moment of practicing what real Islam is.
For you personally, do you feel when you came across the idea of feminism, did you think that that was something that you would advocate yourself as a non-Muslim and then becoming Muslim? Was that something that you feel you didn't need to identify if you did? Do you think that coming into Islam gives women that kind of way of being where they don't need to stand up and fight for certain things like how modern feminists do today? What is your thoughts and your experience around that? Because I'm trying to identify, especially from a non-Muslim perspective, with regards to women, not just with regards to the culture and how they come into the culture. Now we're moving on to how do you feel knowing your religion, knowing your rights? Do you feel that Islam is something that is actually doesn't need that sort of title in sort of like this modern way that it's being used. I'm really sorry there. We have lost connection. She is all the way in Colombia, so inshallah we will have her back. I just want to remind the viewers today that we are talking about an important issue with regards to Islamic feminism, as well as Islamic feminists who do advocate that sort of definition, that title. It is really important that we do find ourselves that as much as Islam has rights for women, we do look at things very differently when it comes to, we have the sort of like acknowledgement that yes, women should have the rights to do whether it's work and get paid in a particular way. Sorry, Angelica, we have you back again. My question, I don't know how far you actually heard me, but did you hear my last question or do you need me to repeat it?
No, I couldn't hear. Please repeat for me. Thank you.
Yes, I was just wondering, when you came into Islam, did you find that you had to, eradicate the idea of feminism, with your knowledge, with you studying your religion, your faith now as a new Muslim? Do you feel that there is no need to stand up and advocate as a feminist? And if not, why?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say that we need to eradicate what we have before we turn to Islam. We need to understand first and know that no extreme is good at all. So if there is something about feminist movements, if there is something good that we can take and keep in order to start the path of Islam, that's wonderful. Actually, in my case, it was like that. I've always been a very independent woman. So I work, I study, I have my kids, I take care of them, I move around freely with my hijab on. So there are many aspects that, of course, Western society has that offers us, and we can use them as a tool to be free and to move in a comfortable way in the society. So my only thing that I want to emphasize on is no extreme is good. So sometimes when you see, for example, those protests in different cities in the world, you see that there are some expressions which are not really useful, yeah, because they put the woman into a position which is not appropriate, it's not beautiful, it's not what we really want. What we have in Islam for women is fantastic, it's amazing. When you start studying your rights, when you start seeing how you can be a woman in all the extension of the word, you see how you can use Islam in your own benefit. So if you want to stand up for your rights, you don't need to take off your clothes and go to a protest. You don't need to do that. You can be a feminist in a good sense. I would say in a good sense because there are extremes which are not good. By expressing yourself, for example, in this program, I'm expressing myself in a free way, and that is a way to show my freedom. Choosing my clothing, choosing what to wear, what to show, what not to show, that is an expression of freedom. Choosing what to study, what to say, how to behave. I mean, Islam gives us all of that. So of course we were born in the West, we were raised in the West. There are many things we need to improve, but I wouldn't say that we need to like switch everything from what we were before to Islam. No, that is not a good way because there are things that we have from our families, from our family traits, from our traditions that we can adapt. And this is a new fashion now. In Latin America, you see that there are many Muslims that are coming, many people who are converting to Islam, they're getting to know Islam, and they feel pretty happy about it and free. So I mean, it's a matter of keeping balance. Life is like that, right? We keep balance and we know what is good and what we can adapt.
I guess what I'm hearing you say, there's a couple of things that, while you were speaking, is that you can take on that sort of role of expressing yourself and being vocal and doing all the things that a feminist, in quote unquote, would actually do. But obviously, it's in with guidelines to our faith. And our faith does not restrict us, but there are boundaries where I guess with the Western sort of like society, there isn't boundaries with regards to that. When you say even we can choose what we want to wear, there is a guideline with regards to it. So there is a difference when you are choosing to advocate feminism as a Muslim woman. It isn't the same necessarily as it would be outside, but I think people can get confused and they can read between the lines, and there is a fine line. And the other point when you were talking is that I guess coming from a Western or a different faith background, you were already given maybe sometimes that way of bringing up or thought that you could be expressive, whereas unfortunately in some Muslim communities, quite a few, maybe not necessarily in the West, or if it's cultural bound, and in certain countries, most Muslim women may find that they cannot be that expressive and they have to be careful. So I guess they do take on a movement and they take on some kind of definition like feminism to actually fight for their right in order to either, for example, drive, to work, to not be seen in a way that they are sort of demeaned or undermined just because of their gender. So I guess, there is very various ways of looking at it. And I guess what I started off saying to begin with, there is such a wide spectrum. So even to define feminism, I find that we cannot just say it in one sort of like the meaning in one sort of, clear cut sentence, because I think there's such a huge spectrum of what it actually stands for. But now coming back to people that are in your experience, that are, especially your part of the world, that are coming as non-Muslims into Islam, do you feel that women, especially because we are discussing feminism, do they feel that they are given their right because of their faith in Islam? Do you feel they're given some sort of like safeguarding if they are aware of their sort of rights? What is your sort of take on, some of the women that you are around or your peers when it comes to discussing how women are in the Muslim world, especially from, your sort of experience and background? It doesn't have to be personal, but from the people that you hear around you. So what is the kind of like consensus around women wanting to come into Islam?
Yeah, before giving you my answer, I would like to come back a little bit to the difference between culture and Islam as a faith. Of course, there are some countries in which women are not granted their rights because there is a very thin line between their culture and Islamic faith. So, of course, there are some men who do not guarantee rights to women. They mistreat them, they oppress them. And of course, they need to stand up and fight for their rights. And I agree with that. That's wonderful. In terms of Latin American society, fortunately, most of our countries have uh, a system which is very well established in terms of rights for people. So in my case, in Colombia, for example, in our case, we do have a lot of rights. We have freedom to express our religion. We have freedom to wear our veil without any problem, any restriction. Of course, in some cases, there are women or sisters who are not able to wear their veil at work, for example, because of the policies of the company, let's say. But
Mm-hmm.
in general terms, we don't suffer too much here. Alhamdulillah, we don't have those issues. I know that there are other countries that in which women have, you know, a lot of problems, but in here, alhamdulillah, we have been able to little by little get people used to us. Of course, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, if you went, for example, to an office, to an official office, and asked for something, for a paper or a document, they would stare at you and say, "Who are you? Why are you wearing that?" If you were, for example, going to ask for your ID, let's say, to the process of getting your ID, they would say to you, "Please take that off because we need to take a picture of you." Of course, we know that our rights and we advocate to them, and we can say, okay, no, I am free to express myself. I can be with my veil, wearing my veil for the picture, and that is not a problem. You can get your passport, etc. So little by little, sisters, Alhamdulillah, we have been working on that, and we have shown our pride, and we have shown that it is good for us, and it is normal to see a Muslim woman wearing her veil on the street. And it's a personal choice. If you don't want to wear your veil, it's your relation between you and God. That's it. We cannot criticize or signal a sister because of that. So, Alhamdulillah, as I said, we have a good difference between culture and Islamic faith in here. In Colombia, in many Latin American countries, we have that right to express ourselves. So that hasn't been a problem.
That is amazing. I guess you are quite fortunate to be able to do that. Do you find that maybe some Muslim communities that are born Muslim, do you find that they may be more restricted because of culture, because they're brought up with the sort of ideology sometimes that there is there is a set place maybe beneath or below a man. I am talking about extreme cases here. I know it's not everyone, and especially not necessarily in the West, because I just want to highlight some of the reasons why some Muslim women may want to turn to claiming and identifying themselves as a feminist advocate, because they feel that there is still discrimination, there's still misogyny, there's still unfairness. And I don't mean that it has to be equal in a sense, because we do have our place. The fact that even when we have rights for divorce, it's very difficult even going to majority of the time, well, every time there is a male scholar. And a lot of women do complain at the fact that even with the rights of certain divorce, there were certain countries, even in the Middle East and North Africa, that only recently, because women stood up and they actually tried to claim that they needed to do certain things, that they were actually given that fairness in being treated in that way. So, do you feel that we should be continuing to fight against this definition with regards to Islam, or do you think we need to maybe redefine the way in which we move forward as Muslims, for fighting for our rights by using a different sort of approach? What would be your sort of advice, like, especially, being a professor, teaching, having experience, and you've got young women around you and they're just going to follow suit with Western ways. But if you think that, look, you want to do certain things, which way would you sort of guide them to go towards that? It's much healthier and it's not heading towards something which is actually not in line most of the time with the way in which our faith actually sort of describes and prescribes to.
Yeah, it's kind of what we were talking about at the beginning. We need to understand first what our rights are, where we are located, what our culture is, what is the behavior of the people around us. Of course, I ask my sisters to keep fighting for their rights because you see, that influence of Eastern societies has a big impact on our societies. Why? Because people portray us as extreme people, as violent people, as oppressive to women, blah, blah, blah. So that is why it is very important to keep working on different campaigns to defend women's rights. It's important to keep educating ourselves. These spaces like this, for example, interviews, speeches, all those elements are super important for us because we need to express ourselves. In the last few years, I happily see how women have been able to stand up and say, hey, something is going on here. Something is going on with my husband. I mean, he shouldn't be treating me like that. I have found out that I have my rights in Islam. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, he came to this world to teach us how to behave and to advocate for our rights as women. He defended women. And we have the best example with Fatima Zahra, peace be upon her. We have the best example with Zainab al-Kubra. We know how, we have seen, we have read how they stood up and spoke and they went against the oppressor. So it's So when we show this to people, of course they will understand. They will say, hey, these women, they can speak up. When I see people, for example, in my field, where I just talk to a lot of people every day, and they get surprised to see me wearing my veil and teaching a class, and they go like, "Can you do that?" I say, "Of course." Are you a rebel? No, I'm not a rebel. I'm a normal Muslim. It's just that it's my right. I can do this. Okay. So of course, when women in the Eastern societies fight for their rights in a good way, keeping their balance, keeping their akhlaq, of course, that reflects here because we can show, we can say, hey, look at this video. Look how these women are fighting, are going on a protest, wearing their veils, chador, hijab, etc. And they don't need to do anything else. They just go and show that they are uncomfortable. You see?
Yes.
So, of course, we are a complete society. We all are one. We are united. We should be more united because we are the Ummah. So, of course, everything you do there will be reflected here and the opposite side.
Yes, that's beautifully said. And I love what you said about how women are changing mindsets. They are transforming certain things that if they are actually being, treated and mistreated in a particular way, they are standing up more. But do you feel that we need more assistance? For example, like talks in the member where we have maybe more women scholars that are giving sort of lectures to other women, and do you feel that even our male leaders, how sort of supportive do you find in your experience? Maybe they may not be aware of what's going on, or if they are, do you think there's still limitations? Do you still think that there may be more room for improvement? How would you want to see some such improvement besides the education? Because this is people that do have the knowledge, but obviously there's only going to be shift and movement when people stand up and speak and they are made aware of it. And do you think that maybe we are in touch with our scholars, or are they in touch with everyday people in order for us to be able to do that? And if they are there many of them to make a difference? What is your thoughts on this?
Well, unfortunately, I haven't seen many of our scholars um, having a clear position in front of this topic. When you, as a woman in Latin America, in Colombia, sometimes when you have a complaint, you don't know who you can talk to because there are some clerics who just don't pay attention to you.
Yeah.
So we need to speak up among ourselves and see what solution we can find out. Uh, in general terms, sisters come to me and I can help them out a little bit and I can make like a bridge between her and the sheikh or whatever. And that is a tedious process because it shouldn't be like that. It should be open enough. It should be knowledgeable. The person should be knowledgeable enough to guide the sisters. So of course there is a lot to be done in that sense as well. Because look, the other day, for example, I was talking to a sheikh and I said to him, there are some issues going on that we should look after, we should be careful about. And he said, show me numbers. I said, how come show me numbers? I mean, you don't see what is going on. You don't see around
Yeah.
yourself. You don't see sisters complaining about their husbands, about the situation at home, about their jobs. I mean, we don't need numbers. We just need to feel what is going on and try to see what we can do. So, unfortunately, some scholars do not have that sense. We have to say this, we have to say it openly. I have said it openly as well to them. And of course, there is a lot to be done about it. And I hope, inshallah, they will get together and try to come with a good solution, with good elements for us to understand. And of course, spaces, as I said, spaces open like this program, like different activities that can be done within the communities and open to other communities that will be one.
No, thank you so much. I think we've covered quite a bit in a short space of time. Unfortunately, we did have some technical issues and we started slightly delayed. And unfortunately, we didn't have our scholar with us today last minute as well because of that. But inshallah, we will try and revisit this. I just want to thank you so much, Angelica, for being across the globe and still taking time out to speak to us today and giving us your insights. And it's an absolute pleasure. And inshallah, I'd love to have you back again to revisit this because I think there's so much more to go into, but in the meantime, I'm sure we've given so much food for thought, and hopefully, we can only make progress in a balanced way, and obviously, with more education and with collaboration with men and women of all levels and backgrounds, as well as with different sort of professionals. And inshallah, we will continue with another episode.